The Old Actors by Charles Lamb. London Magazine, October 1822. I do not know a more mortifying thing than to be conscious of a foregone delight, with a total oblivion of the person and manner which conveyed it. In dreams, I often stretch and strain after the countenance of Edwin, whom I once saw in Peeping Tom. I cannot catch a feature of him. He is no more to me than Noakes or Pinkethman. Parsons, and still more Dodd, were near being lost to me, till I was refreshed with their portraits fine treat, the other day at Mr. Matthews's gallery at Highgate, which, with the exception of the Hogarth pictures, a few years since exhibited in Pall Mall, was the most delightful collection I ever gained admission to. There hang the players in their single persons and in grouped scenes from the Restoration, Bettertons, Booths, Garricks, justifying the prejudices which we entertain for them, the Bracegirdles, the Mountforts, and the Oldfields, fresh as Cibber has described them, the Woffington a true Hogarth upon a couch dallying and dangerous. The screen scene in Brinsley's famous comedy, with Smith and Mrs. Abingdon, whom I have not seen, and the rest, whom having seen, I see still there. There is Henderson, unrivaled in Camus, whom I saw at second hand in the elder Harley. Harley, the rival of Homan in Horatio, Homan, with the bright glittering teeth in Lothario, and the deep Paviour's sighs in Romeo, the jolliest person, our son is fat, of any Hamlet I have yet seen, with the most laudable attempts for a personable man at looking melancholy, and Pope, the abdicated monarch of tragedy and comedy, in Harry VIII and Lord Townley. There hang the two Aikins, brethren in mediocrity rotten, who in Kitely seem to have forgotten that in prouder days he had personated Alexander, the specious form of John Palmer, with the special effrontery of Bobby Bensley with the trumpet tongue, and Little Quick, the retired Diocletian of Islington with his squeak like a Bartholomew fiddle. There are fixed, cold as in life, the immovable features of Moody, who, afraid of o'erstepping nature, sometimes stopped short of her, and the restless fidgetiness of Lewis, who, with no such fears, not seldom leaped the other side. There hang Farren and Whitfield, and Burton and Phillimore, names of small account in those times, but which, remembered now or casually recalled by the sight of an old playbill, with their associated recordations, can drown an eye unused to flow. There too hangs, not far removed from them in death, the graceful plainness of the first Mrs. Pope with a voice unstrung by age, but which, in her better days, must have competed with the silver tones of Barry himself. So enchanting in decay do I remember it, of all her lady parts exceeding herself in the Lady Quackeress, their earth touched heaven. Of O'Keefe, when she played it to the merry cousin of Lewis and Mrs. Maddox, the sensiblest of viragos, and Miss Pope, a gentlewoman ever to the verge of ungentility, with Churchill's compliment still burnishing upon her gay honeycomb lips. There are the two Bannisters, and Sedgwick and Kelly and Dignam Diggy, and the bygone features of Mrs. Ward, matchless in Lady Loverule, and the collective majesty of the whole Kemble family, and Shakespeare's woman Dora Jordan, and by her, two antics, who in former and in latter days have chiefly beguiled us of our griefs, whose portraits we shall strive to recall, for the sympathy of those who may not have had the benefit of viewing the matchless Highgate collection. Oh, for a slipshod muse, to celebrate in numbers, loose and shambling as himself, the merits and the person of Mr. Richard Suit, comedian. Richard, or rather Dicky Suit, for so in his lifetime he was best pleased to be called, and time hath ratified the appellation, lieth buried on the north side of the cemetery of Holy Paul, to whose service his nonage and tender years were set apart and dedicated. There are who do yet remember him at that period, his pipe clear and harmonious. He would often speak of his chorister days, when he was Cherub Dicky. What clipped his wings, or made it expedient that he should exchange the holy for the profane state, whether he had lost his good voice, his best recommendation to that office, like Sir John, with hallowing and singing of anthems, or whether he was adjudged to lack something, even in those early years, of the gravity indispensable to an occupation which professeth to commerce with the skies, I could never rightly learn, but we find him, after the probation of a 12-month or so, reverting to a secular condition, and become one of us. I think he was not altogether of that timber, out of which cathedral seats and sounding boards are hewed. But if a glad heart, kind and therefore glad, be any part of sanctity, then might the robe of motley, with which he invested himself with so much humility after his deprivation, and which he wore so long with so much blameless satisfaction to himself, and to the public, be accepted for a surplice, his white stole and alb. The first fruits of his secularization was an engagement upon the boards of Old Drury, at which theatre he commenced, as I have been told, with adopting the manner of parsons in old men's characters. At the period in which most of us knew him, he was no more an imitator than he was in any true sense himself imitable. He was the Robin Goodfellow of the stage. He came in to trouble all things with a welcome perplexity, himself no whit troubled for the matter. He was known like Puck by his note, ha ha ha, sometimes deepening to ho, ho ho, with an irresistible accession derived perhaps remotely from his ecclesiastical education, foreign to his prototype, of Ola. Thousands of hearts yet respond to the chuckling Ola of Dickie's suit, brought back to their remembrance by the faithful transcript of his friend Matthews's mimicry. The force of nature could no further go. He drolled upon the stock of these two syllables richer than the cuckoo. Care, that troubles all the world, was forgotten in his composition. Had he had but 2 grains, nay, half a grain of it, he could never have supported himself upon those 2 spiders' strings, which served him, in the latter part of his unmixed existence, as legs. A doubt or a scruple must have made him totter, a sigh have puffed him down, the weight of a frown had staggered him, a wrinkle made him lose his balance. But on he went, scrambling upon those airy stilts of his, with Robin Goodfellow, thorough brake, thorough briar, reckless of a scratched face or a torn doublet. Shakespeare foresaw him when he framed his fools and jesters. They have all the true suit stamp, a loose gait, a slippery tongue, this last the ready midwife to a without pain delivered jest, in words light as air, venting truths deep as the centre, with idlest rhymes tagging conceit when busiest, singing with Lear in the Tempest, or Sir Toby at the Buttery Hatch. Jack Bannister and he had the fortune to be more of personal favourites with the town than any actors before or after. The difference, I take it, was this. Jack was more beloved for his sweet, good-natured, moral pretensions. Dickie was more liked for his sweet, good-natured, no pretensions at all. Your whole conscience stirred with Bannister's performance of Walter in The Children in the Wood. How dearly beautiful it was. But Dickie seemed like a thing, as Shakespeare says of love, too young to know what conscience is. He put us into Vesta's days. Evil fled before him, not as from Jack, as from an antagonist, but because it could not touch him, any more than a cannonball a fly. He was delivered from the burthen of that death. And when death came himself, not in metaphor, to fetch Dickie, it is recorded of him by Robert Palmer, who kindly watched his exit, that he received the last stroke, neither varying his accustomed tranquillity, nor tune, with the simple exclamation, worthy to have been recorded in his epitaph, Ola! Ola, Bobby! Not many nights ago, we had come home from seeing this extraordinary performer in Cockletop, and when we retired to our pillow, his whimsical image still stuck by us, in a manner as to threaten sleep. In vain we tried to divest ourselves of it by conjuring up the most opposite associations. We resolved to be serious. We raised up the gravest topics of life, private misery, public calamity. All would not do. There the antics sate, mocking our state. His queer visnomy, his bewildering costume, all the strange things which he had raked together, his serpentine rod swagging about in his pocket, Cleopatra's tear, and the rest of his relics, Keefe's wild farce, and his wilder commentary, till the passion of laughter, like grief in excess, relieved itself by its own weight, inviting the sleep which in the first instance it had driven away. But we were not to escape so easily. No sooner did we fall into slumbers than the same image, only more perplexing, assailed us in the shape of dreams. Not one Munden, but 500 were dancing before us, like the faces which, whether you will or no, come when you have been taking opium. All the strange combinations, which this strangest of all strange mortals ever shot his proper countenance into, from the day he came commissioned to dry up the tears of the town for the loss of the now almost forgotten Edwin. Oh, for the power of the pencil to have fixed them when we awoke. A season or two since there was exhibited a Hogarth gallery. We do not see why there should not be a Munden gallery. In richness and variety, the latter would not fall far short of the former. There is one face of Farley, one face of Knight, one face, but what a one it is! Of Liston, but Munden has none that you can properly pin down and call his. When you think he has exhausted his battery of looks in unaccountable warfare with your gravity, suddenly he sprouts out an entirely new set of features, like Hydra. He is not one but legion. Not so much a comedian as a company. If his name could be multiplied like his countenance, it might fill a playbill. He, and he alone, literally makes faces. Applied to any other person, the phrase is a mere figure, denoting certain modifications of the human countenance. Out of some invisible wardrobe he dips for faces, as his friend Suit used for wigs, and fetches them out as easily. We should not be surprised to see him some day put out the head of a river horse, or come forth a peewit or lapwing, some feathered metamorphosis. We have seen this gifted actor in Sir Christopher Curry, in Old Dornton, diffuse a glow of sentiment which has made the pulse of a crowded theatre beat like that of one man, when he has come in aid of the pulpit, doing good to the moral heart of a people. We have seen some faint approaches to this sort of excellence in other players. But in what has been truly denominated the sublime of farce, Munden stands out as single and unaccompanied as Hogarth. Hogarth, strange to tell, had no followers. The school of Munden began and must end with himself. Can any man wonder like him? Can any man see ghosts like him? Or fight with his own shadow, Cessa, as he does in that strangely neglected thing, The Cobbler of Preston, where his alternations from the cobbler to the Magnifico, and from the Magnifico to the cobbler, keep the brain of the spectator in as wild a ferment, as if some Arabian night were being acted before him, or as if Thalaba were no tale, who like him can throw, or ever attempted to throw, a supernatural interest over the commonest daily life objects. A table, or a joint stool in his conception, rises into a dignity equivalent to Cassiopeia's chair. It is invested with constellatory importance. You could not speak of it with more deference, if it were mounted into the firmament. A beggar in the hands of Michelangelo, says Fuseli, rose the patriarch of poverty. So the gusto of Munden antiquates and ennobles what it touches. His pots and his ladles are as grand and primal as the seething pots and hooks seen in old prophetic vision. A tub of butter, contemplated by him, amounts to a Platonic idea. He understands a leg of mutton in its quiddity. He stands wondering, amid the commonplace materials of life, like Primval man, with the sun and stars about him.